everybody, this is Tom from Tomcat Airguns. Today I want to take a look at 4 different styles of scope cam mounts, as well as a 5th style that I made myself, which doesn't necessarily look through the scope, but it sets your scope on the side, and it was very cheap to make. Oftentimes, I'm sure you've seen on YouTube the guys shooting through their scopes, and you can see the pellet in flight, and you can see what it's doing when it leaves the muzzle all the way to the target. And a lot of us are wishing that we could do that. But some of these scope camera mounts are very expensive and other ones are very cheap, and they're all different styles to them. And so what I wanted to do was take a look at them. Like I said, I've got 4 different styles and just go over some of the pros and cons. That way you can make an informed decision if you're looking at buying one of these. What I'll do is I'll take a look at from the cheapest to the most expensive, and then I'll shoot through the scope and review from the most expensive down to the cheapest. So starting at the bottom, and that's nothing to say about quality, we've got this here, and I believe I found this on the Sieben, S-E-B-E-N website. It's a pretty simple concept. It has 4 thumb screws and screw covers. These are very important and very easy to lose. And you simply slip it over your scope, tighten them down, make adjustments as necessary until you get the view just like you want. On the end here is a 1/4-20 screw. It's in a threaded slot right now, which is kind of a storage spot for it. It's a very nice little feature because this stuff's easy to lose. And also has a whole bunch of washers that comes with it. Next mount is also by Sieben. This one was made famous by Ted's Holdover back in his early days. And there's a bit going on here. A lot of adjustments, height-wise and length-wise, and you can really customize this to the camera that you're using. One benefit to both styles is that you don't have to have a special camera. You can use any pocket camera. You can even use a camcorder. I think it would put a little bit of strain on them, like bouncing type of strain when you're walking with the camera. It might show, but they'll work nice for a multitude of different cameras. Moving up in price, you've got the Eagle Vision. Now, I can't necessarily just show you this all set up because it can be set up in a bunch of different ways. Right now I've got mine set up for a universal mount, mounts to any scope, and it also will screw onto my camera like so. So what you'll end up doing is sliding this over your scope, tightening it down, and then your camera is basically self-centered. One of the downsides to this is it only works with a few cameras, or you have to be creative with the way you mount. Lastly, I've got the side shot mount. This is new to the market, and it's new to me. I've got it mounted on my day state, courtesy of Utah Airguns. And this one uses your cell phone to take the video. There's a prism back in here that basically reflects the light coming from out of your scope to your camera so it can record. One of the nice features about this is that it's easily removable. Just like that, it comes off, and now all you've got left behind is an extra piece of hardware on your scope. So guys, here's the side shot scope cam. All set up on the rifle, ready to go. Before I mount the camera to it, I just want to show you. This is the clamping system that goes on your scope and basically stays there. On the back side, you'll see a bunch of thumb screws all over. That's to adjust to your specific phone. You can see the prism in here. Maybe you can see that, and it just simply mounts to your scope like so. Now, it's not just that easy to mount initially. The scope cam could be a little bit tedious to set up at first, but the nice thing is that if you take your time and you set it up right the first time, you're basically done. You don't have to mess with it ever again. So that would be my recommendation if you end up going with a mount like this. Take your time. Set it up just right. The way this works once you have it set up is you basically just take your phone and slide it on in there. And if you've got your video already recording, then you don't have to really much else to do. But now you can just use your phone settings to focus on what you need to, which is the reticle. Okay, now I'm focused on the reticle. And somewhere out there I'll find my target. Once you find your target, here's the thing. This records in reverse, since it's bouncing off basically a mirror in there. It's recording in reverse, so my right is actually over here and my left side is over there. It's something to pay attention to when you're watching through the scope here. So let's make sure I'm in focus here. And it's happy. Nice, clear picture. I know it got dark, but it is actually dark outside. And that's something you can also fix with your camera settings. Oops, wrong spot. When you're ready to record, simply hit record, and you're off to the races. So I'll fire a few shots so you guys can see what this looks like. Well guys, a couple things. I've got the scope mounted to my Royale because the Daystate ended up having a dead battery. So, that's unfortunate, but this isn't a gun review, this is a scope cam review. What you'll see here is the picture that you're going to record on video. The nice thing is you can use all your camera settings to get this right. Another nice thing is when you set this up initially, this little focus box, you can use it to rotate your camera until it's perfectly centered and perfectly level with the crosshairs. That makes it really nice. Another thing you might notice is this here, the shadow right here. That's actually stuff that's behind me. That's a window behind the garage. When you're filming, your eye is going to cover that, so you won't see that. So let's take a few shots so you guys can see. I'll just make sure I'm in focus and record. Oh, and this isn't dialed in, so I have no idea where it's going to shoot right now. And there you go. It's that easy. Now, if you find your camera is struggling with the focus back and forth a little bit, you may have to do a little adjusting on your scope. A couple of things I really like about the side shot is that you can be on scope. Your hat, if you wear a hat, it might interfere a little bit with your camera and the stuff going on, so, well, you might have to wear a hat backwards while you shoot. But the nice thing is you're looking through the scope, and that's a major benefit when you're trying to take a shot and be accurate. Next thing is the eye cup here. Some people are fans, some aren't. I'm sure it'll come off, it's just a rubber eye cap. But it shades out all the other light that you would otherwise get. So that's just another little benefit. On top of that is the benefit of having it on your camera. Today, or your phone camera, this is an iPhone 7 Plus, and the picture quality on today's phones is really good. So you're going to get a high quality picture and a high quality recording. Not only that, but you can change the speed on your phone to record in slow motion. So that's another big benefit to this. Downside is it's expensive, but you don't really need much else. I mean, here it is, you're basically done. Oh, and another thing is, if you go out and you're stalking in the woods and filming your hunt, you won't miss a phone call. because your phone's right here. You don't have to carry it in your pocket or anything. Oh, I'm getting a phone call. Slide it out. Hey Joe, how you doing? As I stated before, another benefit is if you're not going to do any filming and you know it and it's not going to film for a while, you can just take that off, set it aside, and now all you've got is this here. It's still a good idea to snug down your screws all the time, but you've just got a small piece of extra hardware on and you can just go back to work how you normally shoot. Let's move on to the next one. Next up, the Eagle Vision scope cam mount. This is pretty interesting. Here's the setup I've got right now, and I'll see if I can set it up a different way for you as well. You got to take off your scope cap. Now, I don't need this for this particular hawk, but I'm going to use it just so you guys can see. You slide it over and you tighten it up. Now what's going to happen is inside there is a plastic piece that just kind of grabs from all angles until you've got everything set up. You don't have to worry about your camera being level right now because these little set screws are going to help you with that. One of the downsides to this system is that it only works with a couple cameras. One of those is this excellent. So now that I have it in place, I have to find that sweet spot. And this, is, again, is something you can set once and forget it. That looks like a nice spot initially because I've got a nice bright picture. But what will happen here is I'll zoom in, and that's changing where the lens is for the camera. So now it's not quite so clear of a picture. Also remember, when you record with these, you're going to end up cutting off the top and the bottom. So it looks like I got to go up a little bit. So I'll loosen these up a little bit and see if I can take out some of that shaded area. With a little bit of fiddling, you can get it right. Guys, one of the biggest downsides to this system is that you can't be on scope. And due to the 3 to 3.5 inch eye relief, your camera has to be set back a certain amount in order to get a nice clear picture. So what you'll end up doing is, instead of holding your gun like you normally do, you got to hold it, way out in front of you. And it can be really uncomfortable. Now, if you're sitting on a bench like I am, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But let's take a few shots and we'll see how it does. Now with the side shot, I was able to get in there and really have a nice view of how I was shooting and what I was shooting. I was a little more relaxed. So all my shots kind of ended up in the same spot. This one I had a wanderer, it could have been a pellet, I don't know. But it is harder to get into that zone, that calm shooting zone, when you're sitting way back here off the gun. And it's a different style of shooting because you don't have your shoulder pressure. And your hand, your ergonomics of your arm is a little bit off. And I'm not beating up on it. This was a great system I was using for quite a while and allows you to use a pretty good camera that will also record in slow motion or high speed, depending on how you look at it. And it'll allow you to see what your pellets are doing in flight, which is the whole point. Here's a nice thing that Eagle Vision did is they made these little adapters. This one here is the HPS2, and it screws right into the Hawk Sidewinder. Whoops, don't cross thread. Just like that. And now this was part of the other system. This is 2 out of 3 pieces. I'll unscrew this right here and screw it on to the adapter. Nice and solid. And now this big piece slides right over. And once again, what we're going to do, I'll turn it so you guys can see. Once again, what we're going to do is just find our sight picture. Do a little zoom in here. Make sure everything's nice. Out a little bit. Now it's crooked because I'm showing you guys. But now you can tighten down your thumb screws and it's a nice solid mount. One of the things you've got to worry about with the universal is if you bump it while you're walking around in the woods, it has a chance to flex a little bit and throw your shot off. This here is very solid. The only thing you're going to bump is your camera. And in this case, your camera will, I have the opportunity here to turn this thing because my hot glue came loose. Since I mentioned hot glue in the camera, I want to go over just this one other thought, is that it's camera specific, at least per the website, because of this ring right here. I have an extra one of these somewhere. Here it is. This ring has to be glued onto your camera. Now, they say to use epoxy. I used hot glue. If I put too much strain on the camera, the hot glue breaks. But the nice thing is, if I ever want to rip this thing off, I have the opportunity with the hot glue that I can do that. If you epoxy this on here, that's it. It lives there forever. And it also takes away, it can take away your ability to make this focus if you don't glue it on there right. This actually isn't focus. This is, well, it does a whole bunch of stuff on this camera. It's one of the things that drives me nuts is on this particular camera, it's not, your lens isn't in the middle. So you've got a bunch of extra weight over here. And once my glue starts to break free, my camera will end up like doing this little twist on me all the time. It's very annoying. But that's not your problem, that's mine. So specific cameras, gluing rings on, but it does give you a nice steady shot. It's a nice kind of mid-level, I would say, scope cam mount. And it's more steady than the other ones that I'm about to look at. It's a steady, solid unit, especially if you can screw it into the scope. And there are other mounts to this as well. Here's another, it's that HSW1. I'm not sure what that's going to be screwed into, and then I believe this is for a cell phone, but I've never been able to use it for that because I just never had that kind of setup. But I believe this is for a cell phone, so you got a whole bunch of stuff with this system. If you want the universal mount, it is an extra, I don't know, $60 or something. I forget how much this is. But it is extra money on top of the system that you've already bought. So as I was mentioning before, you have to be set way back on your gun. One of the things Eagle Vision came out with was this mount here. This mount not only puts everything kind of forward already, so you mount it on your gun, and in this case I would mount it probably here, which would push my scope way forward. Or I may have to come back here, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter. What they've done is they've given you the ability to move this forward so that you can sit on your rifle in a more natural position. While that works and it is much more comfortable, what you end up doing is you're trying to focus not through the camera but on the screen right here. So you end up being totally cross-eyed because you're looking at something that's right there. So, still difficult, but a lot more comfortable on your rifle. So that might be an option. But again, this is another extra fee. And I think by the time you add up the system plus the universal adapter, if that's what you need, plus this guy, you might be pretty close to a side shot. So I'll take this all off and we'll move on to the next system. Next up is the Sieben camera mount. I'll bring you guys in close for a look at the setup. With the Sieben, you unscrew this thumb screw so that it fits over your eyepiece, and then you just simply screw it back in. Nice and snug, you don't need to over tighten it. Next thing you're going to want to do is set your height, and that's with this. But you can't set your height yet because your camera's not in there. I'm going to use my XLM, even though I'm not a big fan of it. I'm going to use this one because my other camera's mounted on a tripod right now. Screw on your camera or your camcorder or whatever you're going to record with. Now you want to turn it on and start to zoom in a little bit. And you can see right there, I've got to go down a little bit already. So now I'm going to try to set my height. Just this one. Until I get it just right. And this one is for the swing out. So there you go. And now that that's done, I can also slide it in if I want. Okay, so this is the game of zoom and focus, and where do you actually want it and how much do you want to record. Remember, when you hit record, you're going to go widescreen. That looks about right. Depending on what you want. So sometimes it's best to even record as you set this up. So you'll get to see exactly what you're going to record. You can see how susceptible this is to movement, how that picture's all shady a little bit. So here's the Sieben all set up, ready to go, and we'll take a few shots. Again, I'm set way back, just like the Eagle Vision. My gun's low on air, so it's squeaking. So there you go. Here's one option to the Sieben that I really like. If you unscrew this thumb screw, you can swing the whole system out of the way. And now you can shoot normally through the scope. So a quick flip, that's out of the way, you're shooting normally, really nice. Downside to this whole system is leverage, basically. There's kind of a lot to bump into and to catch, and you could knock this thing out of whack and have to reset your camera instead of taking your shot. So it's just something to be aware of. Overall, it's a really nice system, especially for the price. I think this one's around $50. I'll have to check on that. Now, if you've got a dedicated camera, you can just unscrew and take this and put it aside until another time as which you want to use it. And you don't have to take your camera off or anything if it's all dedicated to the same thing. Final system I'm going to go over is also, I found it also on the Sieben website. It's a pretty simple circle on a plate. To put it basically, it's really a piece of metal screwed to a circle here and with 4 thumb screws. You could probably make something like this at home if you're handy. Use like nylon screws or something. So that slips over. And we'll just snug it down a little bit, somewhat like so. And now, instead of trying to screw this on, I'm going to try to find where I want to be. Looks like I'm going to need some washers. As you tighten your thumb screws, you want to watch your the picture here, because you want to make sure that you don't over tighten on one side. Another interesting thing about this is if you're a little bit off, you can just kind of push it, and the rubber feet on these thumb screws, they're just going to drag a little bit and kind of set in a new spot. So you're kind of cheating. That's a plus for setup, but it's really a downside for actual use, because if you bump it, you're going to throw it off. All right, we got the gun loaded. Kick our camera on. We're a little bit crooked. So see how I'm just moving the whole thing, dragging it where it needs to be. We'll find our target right there, and here's another system where we're set way back. Well guys, that's a nice review of the 4 different styles of scope cam mounts that I have anyway. I'm sure there's other ones out there. I know there's ones that use GoPro and they use prisms, kind of like the side shot does. And they end up holding the GoPro where it points this way and then it reflects down and it reflects back that way and back through again, and probably does a really good job. And you can look through the scope as you shoot, so it's a very natural system. They're like $1,000. They're really expensive, and you know, that's a lot of money that you could put into more shooting accessories or ammo or whatever. So kind of a big hit there. I'd like to show you one more system that I came up with. While it doesn't go through the scope, it's kind of a nice point of view. So I bought this 90-degree, it's called a bridge mount. And it's a Picatinny rail here and a Picatinny rail here, so you can mount like a flashlight or something like that. It was pretty cheap, I think 10, 15 bucks, whatever. What I ended up doing was, I put in since I'm using a dovetail, I put in an adapter. Again, those are pretty cheap. And I took a piece of metal and I basically cut it so that it wouldn't twist. Okay, so it's kind of resting on there. And drilled and tapped a hole. Threw it in, and then I just use a standard 1/4 bolt to mount the camera on it. It's usually my other camera, but I got 2 holes here so that it can, you know, be used on either side or with whichever camera I feel like. So now that I have my camera mounted, all I need to do is loosen up the bolt a little bit, slide it through, hopefully in a spot where it fits. Tighten it down. And now I've got a camera mounted to the side of my gun. The point of view is, as you can see here, it's right down the barrel. And so it gives you a really cool perspective from the shoot. So let's go outside, we'll take a few shots, and I'll be able to show you what this would look like. Well guys, I really hope you enjoyed this review on 4 different ways to mount a camera to look through your scope, and a nice little homemade way to make a mount for next to your scope. Different prices, different levels of quality, different pros and cons to each system. At this point, after using all these systems, I'd have to say the side shot is my favorite by far. Not just because it's the new guy on the block and the new neatest, greatest thing. It's all the benefits that go with it, and really the biggest one is being able to get high quality footage, slow-mo footage, and still look through your scope in a very natural way. That really adds up to a lot of benefit to you, the shooter. Guys, if you think this video was helpful or beneficial to you, maybe share it with someone else that could also find it useful. As always, happy shooting and thanks for watching.